What is interesting to see is this awesome trend line from, back in February through the lows that we actually saw that were even lower than what we got today at the beginning of July. We saw it come down, touch that perfectly, and actually retrace really, really nicely. So we ended up down, again, around 5-6% on the day. But at one point, we were down almost 30%.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of WAGME TV. Obviously, a pretty crazy day in the markets. It all kind of started the last few days with the Japanese market taking, I think, a total of 25%, 8% each day over a consecutive of 3 days. Coming from the hike in interest rates from the Bank of Japan after 30 years, and that kind of just cascaded everything. So we're going to bring you some updates from a kind of trend perspective and chart analysis perspective on both Bitcoin and Aerodrome. Kind of get you a status update there. And then we're going to go behind the scenes on the health of Aerodrome from a volume perspective and activity perspective. So just want to get you the best update we can today. And with that, obviously this is not financial advice, entertainment purposes only. Hope you guys enjoy it. And we're going to dive right into the charts to kick us off here.
Yeah, happy to take it over. So as we all know, pretty bloody day for all of crypto. Not just Bitcoin, not just Aerodrome, but also for the entire market, as Sia kind of alluded to there, right? So we still have this quite large consolidation zone, which you would maybe still look at as a bull flag here on Bitcoin. We pierced through that very hard with all this selling and all the liquidation that was happening in the 7% down that we had today. I mean, at one point, just from the open, I mean, we were down almost 16% in just a single day on Bitcoin, right? So if Bitcoin's moving like that, all of the other coins are moving like that as well. So obviously we recovered very nicely, honestly, and we have since the open of this candle, which was about an hour ago at this point, we've actually moved back quite nicely, up almost 4%. So we're back in this range, which is really interesting. Obviously, we had a pretty good support down here that we actually ended up piercing and closing above. So we're still looking okay as far as supports go for Bitcoin itself. That said, right, one thing that we did learn today is that, anything can happen at any time, right? All of this is just probabilities. Supports don't always hold. Resistances don't always hold in the same manner, right? So at some point, it's either going to break above some of these lines and be bullish or below some of these lines and be bearish. So we wanted to, of course, kind of provide some insight into maybe more of the bearish case with, all the things that are going on, whether that's some of the macro environment, some of the wars going on overseas, whether that's, Japan hiking rates, it could be tons of different things. It could be even a black swan that comes down the line, right? So when we're looking at Bitcoin, some of the key supports that we have kind of identified are right in this $38,000 range. And obviously that comes from some of just the chart support and some of the technical analysis here. Also, if you take a Fibonacci retrace from the lows down here, it actually lines up pretty perfectly with the 618 retrace, which is a typical retrace that's seen. Of course, we're going to have a little bit of support here at the 50% retrace as well. And then, of course, you have to just from a psychological perspective think that there's going to be some support around this 48K range, which is essentially where a lot of those ETF buyers were coming into the market. So if it does get bloody, we're thinking it could come, pretty significantly down. However, right, one of the lines that we look at is this kind of longer term trend line. We want to stay above this in order to really still continue to be bullish on the crypto market as a whole. And of course, when we're talking about Bitcoin, that obviously bleeds into all the other cryptos that we've talked about as well. Before I kind of pivot from here, Sia, did you have anything to add to the Bitcoin chart specifically?
No, I think you did a great job and pretty much covered everything like that. That trend line is ultimately going to be the judgment area. If we fall between that, I think we probably, we have a risk of invalidating the bull market from a crypto perspective entirely. And then I think that, there's obviously a key fib level around that 48.5-ish and just under that where the ETFs came in, which you pointed out, which I think is another, to me, in my mind, if we fully invalidate that trend line, that downward trend line you have up there at the top, that's going to be kind of the next, near-term bottom potentially. So I think you did a great job.
Awesome. Well, let's look at AERO. So very similarly, right, it got beaten down. What is interesting to see is this awesome trend line from back in February through the lows that we actually saw that were even lower than what we got today at the beginning of July. We saw it come down, touch that perfectly, and actually retrace really, really nicely. So we ended up down again around 5-6% on the day, but at one point we were down almost 30%. Right, so quite a recovery out of Aero, just like we saw in the entire market. When we're looking at Aerodrome, right, we're coming back. Obviously, we broke down from this support. So we're coming back and retesting this as resistance. So there might be a little bit of resistance here. Hopefully it can actually just blast above that. But we really want to make sure we're not going below that 5th of July mark that we had that was pretty low. So obviously we didn't invalidate that, which is really nice. And we're seeing a bit of a wedge here. So you hope that it can break through kind of this block here, which would be resistance. And then this is going to be your next resistance whenever it actually comes up and tests this line. If we can get through that, confirm above it, potentially come back down and, test some of these as support, the hope is that we can get up into, that $1.30-ish range again. But again, this is all going to come down to Bitcoin, the broader market, all the macro stuff that's going on. So a lot of headwinds for Aerodrome specifically, and obviously the crypto market as a whole.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mata. That's just a great technical overview. Key levels to watch. Really good to see, honestly, that Aero didn't actually break that low that we had last month. So some of those levels still intact. And yeah, so with the technical analysis and stuff in the books, we're going to hop to kind of more fundamentally what happened, right, in this crazy market meltdown. Like, how did Aerodrome actually fare from a fundamental analysis perspective? And what's interesting is it had a pretty crazy day when it comes to fees, actually. So we're going to go through, obviously, as a decentralized exchange or any exchange, the key metric to watch is really volume. And so what we're seeing here actually, so this is my epoch. And so the epoch is obviously not even close to being done. I believe, they end on Wednesdays. So still a couple days left in the epoch, and we're still at all-time high when it comes to volume. And that is all attributed to today, really the last 24 hours. And, you can see, the slipstream pools being super efficient over here, getting a lot of volume, attracting a lot of traders and stuff like that. So that's the first thing that I kind of wanted to point out. The next thing is, volume directly translates to fees when it comes to decentralized exchanges. And so the other kind of stat I wanted to look at was kind of the fees generated. What's crazy is, like, right here, you see this last 24 hours, a huge spike. Obviously, you had a few others here back when the market was really pumping and, the meme coin frenzy was going crazy. We had a few really high volume or high fee days. But this obviously over the last few months stands out. Aerodrome, actually, the VE Aero holders actually pulled in almost 700K in fees alone. So really impressive. I think, another thing that stands out to me just broadly about DeFi is, you saw a lot of the news articles about more centralized entities like, your Fidelities and stuff like that actually having outages today where people, couldn't access their money, couldn't trade, even though they wanted to. And that doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence. It was a promising day for DeFi in that, while things were going crazy, the use case for DeFi really kind of shined through because most of the big protocols, if not all the big protocols, functioned exactly how they were supposed to function. Liquidations were happening exactly how they were supposed to. Lending markets were working as they were supposed to. None of the decentralized exchanges went down. Yes, they were expensive to use because of the high congestion and high gas fees, but they still worked, right? Like, they weren't not working. And so kind of an interesting way to look at things from a DeFi specific perspective. But yeah, I'm curious to get kind of your thoughts on the last 24 hours as well as kind of how Aerodrome performed.
Yeah, I mean, I think in all intents and purposes, like, it performed very well for the conditions that it was in. If you were to show that chart again, you would see, just like the other recent epochs since the concentrated liquidity pools were introduced to Aerodrome, we saw just an enormous amount of the volume going through these concentrated liquidity pools. And that's really creating the minimum amount of slippage for users. And so that's also another problem that you see with users during these high volatility, times if they're using stable pools or volatile pools, is that the slippage is really a killer for them, and they're losing a lot of value in those swaps. And so, yeah, with the new slipstream update, that came in probably 10 weeks ago, this is really where users are able to get better spreads with their swaps. And so it really was a testament to the platform and being able to perform, like you said, when other traditional TradFi platforms could not perform. And so, yeah, I think it's impressive to see. I guess just diving into the details a little bit. So, why do you think this was such a high volume day? Like, what type of transactions were happening on Aerodrome that caused this much volume?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wonder if we can look at this dashboard to kind of see um, which pools had like the most volume. It looks like wrapped ETH USDT, which makes sense. That's probably like a very popular pool, just regardless. Um, but just people like obviously we saw that huge sell off in ETH today, and like a record volume day for Ethereum. So I'm sure there was a lot of people trying to play that. I wonder if I can sort it by this. Um, yeah, it's mostly ETH that's having the highest volume here. And then, there's a few other altcoins and stuff that are doing quite a bit of volume. Um, but generally, like, when you look at, a super high liquidation day, a super high volatility day, it attracts a lot of traders and a lot of just general panic, right? There's a lot of panic sellers trying to get out of their positions, things of that nature. Um, that's going to just generally like spark a ton of volume across the board, and especially in like the majors like Ethereum, which we're kind of seeing here in the spreadsheets or in the charts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, going back to our tokenomics video that we did here, an important portion to understand about Aerodrome's tokenomics is the fees are actually going to the VE Aero lockers within the platform. And so this was really a really good day to be a VE Aero holder, which in that sense is, you're an Aero holder that's locked their Aero on the platform. And so, yeah, I think it's another reason why this incentive program that Aerodrome has, which is different from Uniswap, which is different from a lot of other dexes, is profitable and successful, because you're seeing other groups within the platform having fantastic success, in an otherwise pretty bloody day in crypto. So, yeah, pretty interesting to see.
That's awesome. Great breakdown, guys. I think theme here is all things considered, AERO held up pretty well. Great day and great week for VE AERO holders. And obviously we got you kind of the updated trends in terms of where both the AERO chart and Bitcoin chart are going to go, and kind of where the potential downside key levels are as well. So hopefully you guys found that interesting, insightful, helpful. If you did, let us know in the comments, and like, comment, subscribe. We always love hearing from you guys in terms of how you guys feel about the current state of the market, and then what you guys want us to cover too going into the future. So again, not financial advice, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. But until next week, wag me.
Wag me.